HGP is an all-volunteer group that believes strongly in freedom of speech, but I must state that the views expressed by myself, our reader, our speaker, HGP members, and our guests at today's meeting are not the official views of the Humanists of Greater Portland. Humanists believe in a progressive philosophy that, without supernaturalism, advocates living an ethical life based on science, reason, and free inquiry. The American Humanist Association has developed a list of behaviors associated with the humanist philosophy. One of these behaviors is environmentalism and the promise that I will take care of the earth and the life that's on it. Regardless of our individual identities, we all share the same home, planet Earth. Just as we depend on the planet to sustain us with its precious resources, this planet's ecosystems depend on us to be good stewards and take responsibility for the impact human activity has on our shared planet. I believe that our program today, Smarter, Greener Electrical Building, will give us information that will deal directly with the humanist behavior of environmentalism. I want to welcome Kathy Humble, who will be doing our reading this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kathy.
Last Sunday, as part of our salute to inspirational women, I talked about the biologist and environmental activist Rachel Smolker. And today I'm going to read a bit from her book, To Touch the Wild Dolphin, A Journey of Discovery with the Sea's Most Intelligent Creatures. This book is available at Multnomah County Library and is also available on Amazon, especially as a Kindle book. At the end of what I'm going to read, she quotes Kenneth Norris, who was another biologist and environmental activist who was her mentor at University of California. So here's Rachel. People make their mark on the world in many different ways, all of which I believe contribute to an interesting culture. Some write poetry, paint pictures, express their emotions through art and music and dance. Others make their mark on the world by doing good deeds. For me, there is something especially exciting about establishing facts, elusive though they may be, contributing to the truly awesome progress of scientific discovery. It strikes me as incredible that not too long ago we didn't know that the Earth was round or that it was one of many planets in a galaxy within a universe full of other galaxies, or what causes weather or the molecular constitution of water or air. We didn't even know of the existence of bacteria or how to cure most common diseases. Only very recently have we discovered genes and begun to understand some of the molecular basis of evolution, heredity, and behavior. Generation after generation, humans have honed and refined and developed means of discovery in a massive and successful effort to comprehend. Though the progress is slow, and the argument can be made that it is impossible to be truly objective, I find it impossible to deny the value of the scientific method. Without science, we would have no reasonably objective basis whatsoever for understanding the world. We would have nothing but hearsay and personal bias. As Ken Norris used to say, science is a system of rules to keep us from lying to one another.
But right now, I'd like to welcome our speaker. Keith is the co-founder and general manager of BlocPower. BlocPower is a Brooklyn-based energy technology startup rapidly greening American cities. Since its founding in 2012, the company has completed energy projects in nearly 1,000 buildings and delivers results ahead of schedule and under budget. Keith received his undergraduate degree at John Jay College and his graduate degree at American International University. He has won multiple national awards for his work that combines his skill as an experienced community organizer and passion for renewable energy. His presentation today will focus on building electrification, which includes solar, but also highlight air source heat pumps. Keith, welcome, and I'm so looking forward to this.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's still morning for you guys, right? Good morning. Yes. First, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Had a great time. I think in February when I spoke to a number of you at a different program. So I'm glad to be back and glad to be part of this process. Um, just to continue on who I am and what the company is, and then I will get into a couple of slides. And I love a lot of back and forth conversations because a lot of what I will talk about is a little bit, to the points made, a little bit biased, even though there's some science behind it because it's very based in New York, very based in the Northeast and in Oakland. And I love to hear about what's happening in your communities and in your homes as well. So as mentioned, Keith Kinch, co-founder, general manager of BlocPower. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. As I mentioned, my parents are from Barbados. So I enjoy warm weather. In regards to the company, we're essentially a climate tech startup, and our goal is to make buildings greener, safer, and smarter. We do that through our software platform that allows us to analyze a building, help with project management, help with construction management, and if necessary, help with financing building upgrades. On average, building owners, save between 20 to 70% annually on their costs. And that's our goal with all our projects. We also have a social impact component, as we hope that every clean energy project we complete also creates local jobs. So if we're able to complete 10, 15 projects in a given city or given neighborhood, we hope either the contractor is local or that contractor hires locally or both. And we find that many times in our projects, and we're excited, especially now where we have a climate crisis. We are still struggling with a health crisis. We've had some difficult conversations around race the last year, and then we're still going through an economic crisis between the first two I mentioned. So I want to say that and talk about our software. Very, very simple. Everyone's busy. Most people are very reactive when it comes to how they look at their building. Something breaks down, we want to fix it. Something costs a lot of money, we want to replace it. It's very difficult to be proactive. Many people have busy schedules and have other things to worry about. So what our software does, it takes away a lot of that time a building owner or portfolio manager needs to worry and think about, and we do that in-house. So it starts right up front, and then I'm going to share one slide now. I think I can, and then I'm going to start from there and walk through our process. So I'll talk about our process because this is the most important thing, what we do as a company. And before I start the process, the one thing I haven't mentioned is, how does BlocPower, how do we make money? How as a company do we make money? It's very simple. Governments and utilities historically have not done a good job on energy efficiency, especially in working class, middle class, low to moderate income communities for a variety of social and economic reasons. Now, as we look toward creating new jobs in frontline communities, we look at how do we upgrade buildings, how do we address the climate crisis. America's urban core, kind of the 5 to 6 million buildings, like how many of you live in, are now front and center. So governments and utilities have to figure out how to change policy, how to match incentives to these buildings, and how to make it feasible to complete projects. They've never really done that. Most buildings that do high level efficiency are skyscrapers or building owners that may have existing capital, or they have a capital budget for their home or a set of buildings. The average building owner across this country, as I mentioned, is very reactive with their upgrades. So what we do is our software, one, we're able to lower cost to acquire customers, and two, lower cost to complete projects. Most engineers are going to charge you a fee, then you're going to get a fee for the construction, then you're going to get a fee for financing, then you may have to go back and forth with paperwork and other items to get the rebate with the utilities, or maybe get the incentive. And then to worry about post-installation, was it put in properly? Who's going to think about that? Do I have to think about it? What's happening? That's a lot. That's a lot for someone. So we do all that in-house. And I'll go through the process here. I think the slide's up. So the first thing we do is, similar to a Google search, as an example, on our website, we have a building intake form, and we're able to have a building, type in your address, put in some information about your building. Tell us what your concerns are, what maybe you have no concerns. Maybe you just want to learn more about your building. And once you take that quick survey, what you get in return is a very simple preliminary scope of work. And it's not in engineering language, it's in, layman's terms for someone that maybe has never looked at engineering before, which is very important. So you get 5 to 6 energy conservation measures. And then maybe as simple as change your lighting, your roof needs repairing, you should add solar, you should change your windows. Or maybe it's very comprehensive as you're running on oil and you're really, spending a lot of money on oil and your boiler is 25 years old, it's inefficient, you need to change your heating system. And that varies from building to building. And once you get that, you're able to sit down and think about what you can do and what's feasible. And then we do a remote walkthrough. And this is even before COVID, now more than ever, as we're still in COVID, having remote walkthroughs have become the norm. And what that means is we may ask you, if depending on your comfortability, to take pictures of your boiler or, walk through with your camera, or we may have someone on our team come by and, maybe reach out the door and walk you through the process as well. We also provide you, as I mentioned, this preliminary scope of work that lets you see your home from a different point of view. Like, your first floor has this type of lighting, your second floor has this type of lighting, your roof needs repairing, and it gives you an overview. And so you see your home very differently. You always see it. Some people still see their home as a money trap or a money opportunity, but we also see it as a way to how do we make it efficient, air quality, save money at the bottom line, and hopefully, if you want to stay in your home as long as possible. Next step is, once you as a building owner want to move forward with any given part of the project, we now work with you, and maybe you have your own contractor, which is fine. If you don't have one, we work with a national network of contractors, and we do multiple bids to find the most efficient, hardworking, reputable contractor to complete the project with you, and then we figure out that final scope of work to complete the project. Believe it or not, that's actually all the easy parts, because now it comes down to a price tag, right? Great, you want to put solar on your home, and maybe you also want to put in air source heat pumps for heating and cooling, and here's the cost, right? And for many people, there's a price tag that doesn't match maybe what they have. So what BlocPower is able to do, and I'll move down a slide or two at a certain point, we provide a no money down lease option. And the closest thing we always reference is similar to leasing a car, where you're able to take, whether it's solar, lighting, HVAC equipment, whatever your building upgrade package is, and you're able to put all that into one package and pay a lease payment, which is at minimum 20 to 70% less than your annual energy costs, and you're saving money on operating and maintenance. Some people do a lease as short as 3 years. Some people do as long as 15. Everyone is different. Many of the buildings we work with over the last 2 years have taken the longer 15 lease approach, but that's for folks who don't have the cash on hand to complete projects, which does happen a lot in a lot of buildings we work in. Finally, through all of that, we still work with you and your contractor and your local utility and or your local government to find out which incentives you can capture in rebates, so to lower the cost. And that's important. For many building owners, rightfully so, either they don't know what they are eligible for, or there's a lot of paperwork, or they just don't know the process, and we're able to navigate that whole process. So from beginning to end, our platform in partnership with our team, we're able to walk you through the entire project and complete it. And at the end, we also provide operating and maintenance for those who have no money down lease option for the equipment. And if you do cash option, we will work with you and the contractor as well. So you'll also have a peace of mind on not just the project being completed, but also knowing that, hey, this is new equipment. I may not know anything about it, which is fine. Some of the stuff I don't know. And you're able to move forward from there. Let me bounce around. So let me bounce to this slide. I mentioned this twice. This is just a snapshot of what we've been using pri- primarily in New York State, Philadelphia, DC. We recently rolled out this heating as a service, no money down lease option, I would say about 18 months ago. And we've completed over 20 projects utilizing this. Most of the buildings are multi-unit buildings. And for us, when we say multi-unit, we mean buildings 5 units or over, 5 to 50 units, 5 to 100 units. And we found that many houses of worship or small commercial buildings that serve as multiple spaces use this. So you may have a building that's a school that also has, an after school program, or maybe there's a house of worship that also serves as a food pantry. So they're using it for various reasons. Or you may have a mixed use building that the first floor, is like a basketball court or recreation center, and the top floor is a residential. And they just don't have the capital, even more now, over the last 2 years or so with what's going on in this country, to complete projects, but they have to. They want to upgrade the building because it's an air quality issue. They're losing money. Maybe they're running on oil, or maybe they have an oversized or inefficient natural gas system, depending where they live, and they're looking for ways to lower those costs. Any questions so far? I've talked a whole lot. Let me stop for a second, and I'll jump to a slide.
Yeah, no, not yet. But I
Okay.
think they're interested in what you're saying, and just the question, now that you've asked, I'm sure the questions will start coming.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to show what a ductless mini split is. It goes by 3 terms. People call it air source heat pumps. It's really nice, but it also is not just a system for heating; it's a system for cooling. Many people call it a multi-split system in the industry, and then there's a VRF. So many of you may have seen variations of this. If you've ever been in a hotel room, you may see this, up against the wall. A lot of these are found in restaurants or in new buildings, new construction. And then there are a lot of them in single family homes across the country. Very prominent in single family homes where you're trying to heat different parts of the house at different temperatures. Maybe you want the kitchen a certain temperature, and you want your bedroom a certain temperature, and you want the living room or the bedroom a certain temperature, and having one centralized system where you got to turn it on and let it run for 4 or 5 hours to heat the entire home. Then you open in a window, and then you're wasting energy. It's not helpful. Or in the wintertime, if you got an AC unit sitting outside your window, and that's really, not wintertime, in summertime, an AC unit sitting outside your window to cool your home, it's nice, but you're losing money literally because air is coming out because you got it in a window, and you've got to turn that AC on X amount of hours to heat a room or heat parts of your home. So the ability to have one multi-split system that's heating and cooling, that can be set on a temperature using your phone, using your laptop, and it's powered through electricity, which is healthier for your home, and it does lower carbon emissions, is tremendous. As many of you may know or may not know, having dirty fossil fuels increases particulate matter in the building, and it exacerbates items like asthma for our, younger folks and folks who are seniors. And then you think about now, as what air quality has been more important over the last year or so, you don't want your building to be an exacerbating factor for any other, air quality diseases or anything that may affect people's health. One example that, and to talk about policy in New York State, New York City, there's a law in which you have to put a grade on a building. So similar to going to a restaurant in New York City, you can go by 5 restaurants and see an A, B, or C on a restaurant. You have to decide where you want to eat at. But now there's grades on buildings. So you can leave your home, which is a C building, and eat at an A+ restaurant. So now more than ever, building owners have to think about their presence in the community, and if they want to bring in new tenants, or if they want to sell a single family home, or if they want to put a new building up, is your building healthy? So nowadays, back to the great points made, science, if your building is a C and you say it's not, you got to prove it with science, got to prove it with carbon emissions. So it's something in New York City now. I know it's something that many other cities and states are thinking about. But it's also, you should think about, even without having grade on your building, you know, as we all sit here and think about what are we doing to be good stewards of, you know, our city and our state and our communities and our earth, you know, our buildings, which are seemingly inanimate objects, are they helping or hurting our process as we're sitting all in our different locations now? So just wanted to put that there as you know, what, when we say HVAC systems and air source heat pumps, just to give an idea of what they may look like. You may have seen them before. That's important. I'm gonna jump to some case studies. So this is a house of worship that owns 5 buildings, and this is one of their residential homes that was running on oil. And I'm not gonna read it verbatim, but essentially running on oil, spending, you know, up to $20,000-$30,000 a year just to heat and cool the building and heat up their hot water system. And we were able to just recently, this is March, I would say the end of December, complete this project, and went through the same process, submitted their information on our website, connected with someone in our team, worked with them through a final scope of work, helped them find a contractor. The owner of the home and folks that run the house of worship decided to use a no money down lease option because they did not want to come out of pocket. And, you know, today they're sitting there and they love the system. They have, you know, everything in place. And this particular project was featured, I think, on a podcast with Danelle Baird, who's the founder and CEO of the company. So this is a big item, you know, one of our big item projects, which is very important. We're proud of, and maybe similar. This is more similar to some of the buildings in your community.
Problem. Keith, we do have a couple questions, and I'm really loving these case studies, so I will go back to those as soon as you answer a couple of these. Dave Peterson has a question. He wonders, how do heat pumps work?
That's a great question. Let me try to give you the non-engineering answer.
Okay.
And so essentially, it's a system that forces outside air. Essentially, I'll go back to the slide. It's a great question. Let me show. So looking at the multi-split system, essentially it's air being forced on the outside inside and changing the temperature. So if you're looking to cool your home in the summertime or in the warmer months, the system takes air from the outside, which of course is hot, goes through the system and cools it down. Reverse in the wintertime, when it's cold outside and you need some warm air in your home, it takes cold air from the outside, forces through the system, and it warms the air into your home or your place of business or wherever. And that's the most simplest way to do it. And it's done through lines through the system, and also in the bottom section, which is at the bottom, underneath the multi-split system, you see this large inverter, which has the fan, the Sullivan fan. That is the outside. That is the actual system that is forcing the air into your home or into your location to heat or cool it. And it's all done through electricity. So you're not burning any fossil fuels. It's quiet, which I know is important, if that's one of the questions. And it's relatively new to America in existing buildings. It is very popular in new buildings, but in existing buildings, it's very new. In other countries, it's very commonplace to have these across all types of buildings, even existing buildings. It's becoming popular just in terms of lowering costs, just in terms of lowering carbon emissions, but we're not there yet, where we have to really catch up if we really want to get in front of any climate change goals or any energy crisis goals over the next years. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Renga has a question. Renga, can you come on and ask your question, please?
Yes. I have a question about backup. assume that we are talking about rooftop solar panels. I think they are very good. They work very well for most of the time. But there are occasions like we have a big snowstorm, like we had recently, which is a large parts of the country, then the solar power stops because the snow is on that. And the rooftop ones is more difficult to get removed as compared to, say, a centralized solar plant where they have the infrastructure to maybe remove. It's much more difficult for individuals to remove the snow. And if it is about a few hours, it's fine. But if it is going to be days like it happened in recent times, what sort of backup can we think of? Is there what sort of research going on in terms of providing backups for such contingencies? It may occur maybe now with climate change, maybe every year it may occur, or maybe once in 2-3 years. It can be a large scale. Several states can be affected at the same time. So what is the sort of concern? How does one go about it? Is there any research going on in terms of the right type of backups?
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's a great question. I know for a number of our buildings, they've installed solar batteries as part of their backup system. But yeah, there's still a number of ways that we're still trying to figure out how to deal with storms of that nature. You know, what happened in Texas and other places, I know folks think about, and even in New York. But most systems that we're installing now, we're saying please add solar batteries as part of the system, as just, you know, some form of backup. For two reasons. One, obviously for backup for your home or for your place of business. But two, depending on the utility you are under, there's an opportunity to also monetize the power that you are storing and not using to return back to the grid. So that's the very short answer. But there's still things moving forward. You do have solar panels that go on the actual roof, to your point, like on the actual roof. You have solar panels that are on a canopy that, you know, the canopy is put on your roof and the solar panels are put above it. So therefore, you don't have snow necessarily on your roof on the solar panels. That's one. There are solar panels that are now part of windows, where you can install a window that also is able to generate solar power as well. So you're not, to your point, you're absolutely right. You're not worried about a snow-covered rooftop and your panels being covered. Maybe it's easier to have your windows that are not covered. So there are a couple of options that are out there. It just depends on what type of building you have or what are your needs, right? And that goes back to understanding your building and knowing what's feasible. But yeah, I had a similar conversation with someone 3 weeks ago, and this kind of window solar panel seems to be, you know, something that's new that folks are looking at.
Thank you, Keith. There's a question from Al Christians.
Yes. Question is about ventilation. You've talked about ventilation. The science says that when carbon dioxide gets high, now the atmosphere now is around 400 parts per million, right? And over 1,000, the human brain starts working not quite so good. It's easy to get 2,000 parts per million indoors in a crowded building. It's known that probably up to 500 is safe, but above that you can have above that in crowded buildings, and it's not good for thinking. And now with the COVID pandemic, we've got another additional requirements for ventilation. I wonder if your service, your guarantees of service, and all include any thing about parts per million of carbon dioxide inside the buildings, as far as what levels you'll maintain. I'm suspicious of these focus on saving money, because that kind of, you know, I've ridden on enough airplanes and they save money by kind of suffocating their passengers. And so I wonder what you're doing in that regard as far as guaranteeing that there's good fresh air in your buildings.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. Over the last year, we've definitely shifted our conversations around air quality more than saving money. And obviously, it depends on the building owner what he or she has been focused on. Um, we're not going to make any guarantees because that's just not feasible. What I would say is that to be very honest, the systems do provide the cleanest air possible. And they do maintain the levels you mentioned. And you're right, in a crowded room, in a crowded building, the carbon dioxide levels can increase. And we're not doing what airplanes do either. The the system, which is right. So, but on a larger scale, the system size is key. So when you think about putting in a new system, um, there's a couple of factors. One, it's the load calculation, how much electricity needs to be used to get to that level you mentioned, to make sure the air quality is in the right place. And that goes back to our platform and our engineering team. And then second, prior to any system being put in, there's a test done, right? You got to test the system, see if it's working, see where the air quality is, their test taken. And then there's constant operating and maintenance once the system is put in. It isn't like, I come by your home today and we have a great conversation. We work with a contractor, gets installed, and like that's it. Like there needs to be constant operating and maintenance, like with any system, particularly any systems that are heating and cooling, to make sure the condensers are running properly, to your point, to make sure the filters are being replaced when they need to be, in partnership with you and the contractor to make sure the air quality is still strong, which is important. And to make sure that, to the last gentleman's question, if there's any inclement weather, what does that mean for the system and defrosting and other issues? So that's all part of the scoping process and post installation operating and maintenance process, which is important. And we talk about that. The one of the slides I haven't shown yet, which is a larger church, they have a school in there. So air quality is like the number one priority. As much as they save money, they're like, we teach kids 5-6 days a week.
Yeah.
Are they safe? And that's important. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Schools are some of the places where the carbon dioxide gets to be very high, over 2,000 parts per million. In elementary classrooms, it's supposed to be pretty common. Does your software actually monitor amount of CO2 in the air as part of its whatever it does to control these systems?
Yes, it does, and we also utilize the systems themselves also monitor air quality. And I would say a number of those buildings you talk about, and my kids are in New York City public school. Some of those buildings still run on oil and natural gas. So by design, they're going to create more opportunities for increased carbon dioxide in those buildings. So you're absolutely right. And it doesn't help if you're heating and cooling the building unevenly and you're having windows open and close. You also have to prepare food for X amount of children each day as well, using the same systems of fossil fuels. So as we move off those systems, by design, we should have lower carbon dioxide rates. And as we continue to monitor those systems to make to increase our technology, that should not be a issue moving forward, and that's important. Any building we work in, where we hear there's a food pantry, there's a school, there's some community-based approach. We know air quality is first. As much as they may have concerns about savings, they're just like, tell us about the air quality, show us the test, or give us some snapshot of before and after. So as a project is done and all of these are completed, we're still doing monitoring of the buildings. So this building right here, that's on this St. Bartholomew's, this is a building that has a school inside it, and we in partnership with the contractor actually stopped by on Thursday of last week just to check in to see how things are going. It just finished snowing, it's warm again. We're in the springtime where the temperature could be 30 one day, 70 the next day. How's the system? There's children there. And they're just like, yeah, everything's going fine. And we just checked everything's okay. And also we do customer education. These are new systems, and someone may have worked the old oil natural gas system for 45 years. And it's like, okay, now you got to work this new system. That's 3 buttons and it's on your phone, right? or the pastor and the principal have to understand who gets to do what on a Thursday to set the, to have it set properly or to monitor it. So once again, it's not just we're installing it and then good luck. We understand, it's a process to understand the system, control it, and we're going to be with you every step of the way.
Keith, I had a question. This is Helen. You also have a history of being a community organizer, and how did you connect your strength as a community organizer with these projects?
Yeah, I'll take some credit. I'm gonna give Danelle a lot of credit on this one. So Danelle's the founder and CEO of BlocPower. So Danelle, he and I met 15 years ago. We both were organizing. He was organizing on a national level around a lot of policy issues. I was organizing on a local level. We ended up working together at the time for Senator Obama when he ran for president. Danelle, when he got elected, Danelle went to work at the White House, and I spent time working in the Democratic National Committee. And Danelle worked on at that time, the Green Jobs Package, the Green Stimulus Package in 2009. So we took our organized experiences and our policy experiences and said, here, how do we remove barriers for buildings to complete energy upgrades? And how do we utilize our relationships for, the 15, 20 years we've worked in these neighborhoods that historically, have trust issues with government, or just don't know how to operate government utilities, or just don't know how to upgrade their buildings. So Danelle, in his brilliance, went to B school and started the company. And he said, hey, Keith, you know a lot of community leaders in these neighborhoods. Was the focus in New York State at the time we first started. How do we break those barriers? And we break them by talking to people one-on-one. Like, someone could come to your home right now and pitch you a great idea, and that's really nice. But building owners trust other building owners, and neighborhoods trust their neighbors. So if we're able to break that barrier through years of working together on other projects and having trust, it allows us to not move into neighborhood, but move forward on projects. So when we first started, we had 4 or 5 building owners that were willing to be early adopters to work with us, to say, we've worked with Keith and Danelle in the past. We understand you're a new company, or we're going to try to complete projects. And once we got 1 or 2 projects completed, we're able to market them and expand from there and build. But even then, we still, to this day, take advice from advisory board members and communities. So when we spent 3 years working in Brooklyn and Southern Queens to complete 700 projects, it was great that Danelle and I grew up there and we worked there and we knew the area, but that doesn't mean we knew everything. So we had an advisory board, just like all of you on the phone, where it was like, there's a nonprofit person on the call. There's someone that works in housing. There's someone that's part of these 3 organizations. There may be a person of worship on the board. And each of them were able to let us know what are the best ways to talk to building owners. Is it phone call, Facebook ad, clergy breakfast, coffee or friends at Starbucks, and to be able to engage. And then at times when we had barriers, we were able to say, well, I'm working with Rachel. Oh, I know Rachel. Yeah. Well, we did Rachel's, HVAC project, and you can call her. Okay, I will. I don't trust you, Keith. That's fine. You don't have to trust me. You trust Rachel. That's great. Talk to Rachel. Yeah, they did a great job. I think you should look at it. And that alone breaks so many barriers and so much time and so much cost. And we're able to scale that. So as much as we have great software to complete projects, it's building that trust through a community data-driven approach, and also how we identify and target inefficient buildings. So to this day, I still have one-on-one conversations with building owners. I still walk in around communities, and we have relationships across the country where we're able to say, hey, we've completed these projects. We want to work with you, and we build on existing partnerships. So like what you're doing today is a great example. Like, if someone was like, hey, I saw BlocPower on a Google search, what do you think? And Dan is like, yeah, I was on this conversation with Keith on a Sunday. I think he makes sense. He's all right. That's going to go farther than anything that person saw on Google, any videos, any articles. And that's how we scale. Like it's bottom up. It's not top down, it's bottom up. We got to start from the bottom, and we got to keep going. And we've done that, as you all have done, painfully for a long time to get to this point. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And even now, we're still organizing in neighborhoods around clean energy now. So for me, I think my title is general manager, co-founder, whatever. To me, I'm still like organizing. I'm just organizing around like buildings and building owners, and we're still creating jobs. So, and I said, the reason why I give Danelle credit, Danelle said, hey, you should come join and work with me on this. He said, do what you do now, which is we organize. We're just going to do it around energy. So as all you gotta do great work, you should try to, if we can, simplify our roles to understand what we're doing.
I know,
if possible.
From that whole idea from the bottom up, getting people to buy in who live there. Not that Portland has a real history, not a very kind of a shameful history of starting projects from the top down. And I really appreciate the things you're doing. I do have a couple questions here, though. Suzanne, we see your hands up. Can you come in and ask your question, please?
Electrification. And I'm really confused because I know that our power companies, Pacific Power here and PGE, they get their power from coal mines and also natural gas. And those are greenhouse gas problems for us. And so how does your company bypass that? Or what does electrification mean?
Yeah, that's a two-part question. I'll try to answer them separately to the best of my ability. So on a building level, if you look at the system you're heating your home with now, if it's oil or natural gas, right? You as a building owner, as a homeowner, as a business owner, you're using fossil fuels to heat your building, right? So our goal on that level is to get your building off fossil fuels first and use electricity to heat and cool the building. So that's the first step, right? If we can do that, that goes a long way with carbon footprint. It goes a long way with how we look at sustainable communities across this country. And also to get into your first part of the question, it also then begins to change policies and how governments look at how they heat and cool and energize their cities as well. So for the two you mentioned, the question for them is, if more buildings are converting all fossil fuels to air source heat pumps and electricity to heat and cool the buildings, they also have to start making shifts on the ground and also look at what policies need to change and incentives. So I'll give you an example. In 2005, in New York City, most buildings ran on number 6 oil. There's 2, 4, 6. Why they pick those numbers, who knows? But they're run on number 2, 4, number 4, number 6 oil. And then New York City banned the use of number 6 oil. So anyone on number 6 oil will be fined. Everyone is going to natural gas. And people were going to natural gas already, but it forced building owners and it forced utilities and it forced folks that provided energy to make a shift on their policy in their day-to-day lives to come off oil to go at that time to gas. Now in 2021, there's a shift around gas moratoriums. We've seen them a lot in the Northeast and other places. So now, once again, building owners have spoken about what they want in their buildings, and then now utilities and governments are listening. So now they have to shift on how they heat and cool buildings. So if your city is focused on lowering carbon emissions and focused on changing or diversifying the grid, it's twofold. It's bottom up, showing the quote unquote energy of building owners making the changes and showing, here are the case studies, here are the projects, here are the protests, here are this and that. And then on the top side, it's how do we shape policy? And that's what we've, at least as a company, we've seen that more in places like New York, California, Philadelphia, where they've got to do that. So without knowing the pure politics in Portland, that's one way to do it. It starts with like building to building. I think I had made that comment in the other conversation. If one day 35 homes are like, look, we're all fossil fuels, we're on electricity. And folks are like, why? I'm like, we're done with natural gas. We're done with fossil fuels. Everyone will listen. Everyone, meaning your neighbors, your households. But then utilities will listen and realize, oh, wait a minute, we can't make money on natural gas anymore. We can't make money on coal. We've got to go to electricity. And it starts that process. But it's not overnight. But that's a great question. Like we still struggle with that across different parts of the country when we talk to building owners and other utilities.
The church
Okay.
has a steep
Yeah.
roof. Does the snow stay on that roof in the winter or fall off?
It's both, but the church is also they also have 4 other buildings. So this is the main the quote unquote main sanctuary where they have services.
Mm-hmm.
They have another building that has a flat roof, and that is where they have school.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have another building that also utilized for school. Then they have another building that is for community services.
Okay.
So if they're going to put solar on the rooftops, it's going to be on the ladder through I mentioned. If it's going to go on the roof,
okay.
And it could be. So that's a great question though. But yeah, and this particular project was featured on the Weather Channel maybe about a month or so ago with Dave Malkoff and Donnell, and they talked about the work in the building.
I'm going to ask Jeff Strang to come on in because he's got some I think some comments and a few questions that I think I'm hoping he'll add some interest to some questions to the discussion.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing, Mr. Kinch, and I'm hoping the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which we passed in 2018, which will eventually put $50 million into clean energy projects in the city of Portland. Once it gets going full steam next year, I'm hoping that we'll be able to do some significant energy upgrades to our buildings here. But the mix is a little different than in Brooklyn. We don't have nearly as many multi-family buildings. We have a lot of single family residences here. So the mix is different.
We focus initially on multifamily homes and kind of these houses of worship or small commercial buildings because they were, to the science, the largest offenders in regards to carbon emissions. So we focus on those first, and then also the incentives and where the city was going kind of lean that way. And as we did this work, we found ourselves saying, okay, well, what's there for single family homes? And as you know, they can vary from like 1 to 2 units to like kind of a larger 5-unit home. So we spent time working with NYSERDA, who's a great partner, and Con Edison to figure out what incentives are available and next steps. And now, we're working toward retrofitting hopefully 1,000 homes in the next 2 years that are single family. Wow. And it sounds like a large number, but in 2017 we did 200 solar homes in like 15 months. So 200 homes were install solar panels, and it was the same community-driven approach. We worked on the ground. We had 3 very early adopters that was willing to put panels on their home and be like the face of the work, and we're able to replicate it. And I would say to your question and to the last question, if there's an appetite to do single family homes, then as we look at the Portland Clean Energy Fund, as it gets vested, there should be talk about how we're going to incentivize the largest swath of homes based on building topology. So if it's all single family homes, it's like, okay, well, what are we doing to make sure as many single family homes as possible are completing projects, and what incentives do they need? And the way you get that number of what they need is you have to talk to building owners, taking building data. So even with our building intake form, we're able to help cities and government shape policy on incentives. So we may find that, we're working in Portland. It's like, hey, well, what people really care about is, back windows for other reason. Back windows are a big issue for Portland homeowners, that are single family homeowners. What incentives are in place to make sure those are replaced, and it's not either any out of their pockets or maybe low cost. And that's how, as folks on this call and others should begin to think about how, as much as there's money coming and, folks want to make decisions, which are great, but if you are the ones that are literally the stakeholders in the community and the homeowners, and you want to make the difference, then you should have a say on not just how the money is spent, but what incentives, as ratepayers, how the incentives work, um, and how they benefit you. And then, like I said earlier, these are great jobs. Like, someone's got to do this work. I'm not going to install these systems. Neither are any of us on the call. So how we make sure folks that either are out of work because of the pandemic, or historically have been underserved or underemployed, how do we get them on a career path to complete this work? And then there are folks that are entrepreneurs. It's just like, hey, I'm good with my hands. I'm not going to college, but I love to install stuff. So I'm going to have a team of 5 to complete this project. So the project on the screen, the single family home, this is like a family run business of like 8 to 9 folks, father son business, and they complete the work. And then the first project I mentioned, which was on the podcast with Danelle, the Cornerstone Baptist Parsonage, that's an 8-person team. And both of them are minority women-owned businesses that are trying to get a foot in. And largely, as the industry begins to shift, there's a labor force problem. A lot of folks who are good at this work are retiring. They're retiring pre-COVID because they were up against the quote unquote retirement rate age. And then now with COVID, some of them just like, hey, I'm done. I'm not doing this work anymore. And we don't have, and there's a gap there. There's a gap on skills. So there's an opportunity for folks of all ages, but definitely younger folks, folks who are millennials or Gen Z, to get into the industry and get a career or create a company. We always look for opportunities to grow and get people chances to make a living and be wealthy. This is a chance. This is $1 billion industry that is not going away for a couple of years. And then we have a partner in the federal government that has committed dollars toward this work, which means that, there's money behind these policies initiatives. So how do we maximize the next 12 to 18 months, with the recent passing of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package and others to green buildings, create jobs, deal with other issues. So it's a lot. I think it's a great time, I think, to think about the science that we've all talked about. It's a great time to think about how we upgrade buildings. I think it's a great time to use both to like organize and kind of build our networks, and a great time to like create jobs and feel like we're making more positive steps in the right, going toward the right path.
Keith, there's a question. What kind of an education or training would someone have to be able to do the work that you're talking about?
Hmm. That's a great question. I'll start with just pure installation. You probably need to take an HVAC course, and there's an exam. Learn to install refrigerant lines, and these are things you learn in trade school. You don't have to go to college per se to learn these skills. If you're talking purely HVAC, if you're thinking about lighting or solar installation, there's definitely training programs, and for many places you learn on the job through apprenticeships. So BlocPower has we work closely with contractors to help folks that are not in the industry learn on the job, learn skills, and kind of take those tools with them, whether they stay on with that company or they go on to other things. And that's on the hardware installation side. And I think that's important. For those that are more, hey, I'm a project manager and I'm going to run a team. Yeah, part of that still requires trade school and other skill sets, but it still doesn't require someone to spend, like I did, 6-7 years in college to learn this. And people can learn right away. If tomorrow we were like, here's a training program, to learn how to install HVAC, it may be a 6 to 8 week program, and maybe a 6 month program, depending on which type of systems you're installing. Um, large contractors or large manufacturers like Daikin and Mitsubishi and Fujitsu, which are 3 Japanese firms. There's American firms as well that have training centers across the country that they train contractors and they train workers of contractors to do this work. In New York, you can, have a high school diploma, go through a full AVAX training, and you could be making, $90,000 a year within a year or so if you have the skill to install these systems. So you can live, you can gain a living wage by doing this work, and that's why I feel there's like a large opportunity to get folks through this process. It's almost like what's a good example? It's almost like the new form of the Industrial Revolution, where folks were like, head to the factories, leave the farms, and now it's just like, well, yeah, we want you to head back home and complete these projects in your homes or in your neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Minus the carbon emissions and the soot.
I was looking at the project details for the single family project, and I tried to understand what the financials really involve. The project cost, I assume that is a cost that's paid by the single family homeowner with the proper incentive, $23,000. Then there's a maintenance, a lease term, and those issues. What, for example, I can understand the maintenance included in the project cost. The 15-year BlocPower lease term, what does that refer to? What does the homeowner gain from that lease incentive?
So I'll give you this direct project example and then a large example. So for this project, the building owner utilized incentives through the state government to lower the cost. And you're right, that was the total cost of the project with incentives, and it's approximately $24,000. So you're right. In regards to what a building owner will get, there's 3 things. One, the idea of not coming out of pocket up front. So, 23,000, 43, 73,000, whatever the project cost is, you're paying 0 out of pocket to complete the project. That's one. For many building owners, that's one of the things that entices them to use our no money down lease option. The second is maintenance, right? Not worrying about who to call, or I need to find a new person, or the company shut down, or who's a contractor. Being able to know that for those who use the 15-term lease, whether it's 15 years, 5 years, whatever the term is, they can connect with BlocPower in partnership with the contractor to make sure operation and maintenance is occurring, especially with changing of the filters for the systems and making sure the systems are running properly. And there's no added cost, right? Every time you call someone comes to your house, I gotta pay this guy X amount. He came by, he kicked the system, it's working now, right? That's all part of 15, for those who take 15 years, that's all part of 15-year lease. Being able to call, our construction manager at BlocPower, and then coordinating with the contractor to say, hey, one of the systems, the fan sounds weird. I don't think it's working right. Great, we'll work to send someone there to take a look at it. And that's done. And it isn't like, oh, make sure you have your checkbook out. Or once we get there, we set 500, but now we kicked it. It's now 2,000. No, like that's all part of your lease. It's done. And it's a peace of mind for many building owners. So not knowing every time and also for many building owners, where we learn to fear. Like, I don't want to call someone because I call them and I think I have a $4,000 problem. It's a $9,000 problem, and now I'm stuck. Or do I have to do it? Or what's happening? So that's the other part of the peace of mind we've packaged into our lease offer. It's worked well so far, and we are scaling it to other parts of the country. We mentioned we completed 1,000 projects. A lot of them are definitely within the Northeast, but we have projects in 24 cities across the country, and they're all looking at this heating as a service model. But the incentives are different in each city. So I would say that.
So Keith, do people then pay BlocPower monthly? How do they pay you?
Oh, good question. Yeah, for those who are using the no money down lease option, yes, there's a monthly payment, and the system, it's on BlocPower to operate and manage the system. The other thing that's what I did not mention is, unlike other energy financing options, we're not putting a lien on the home, or we're not putting liens on buildings, which historically, for many other financial programs around building upgrades, is seen as a form of predatory lending. Because if you upgrade a building and you miss your payments on the upgrade of the building, now I can take the building, which has happened in certain locations. We don't do that. There's no, oh, you missed 4 payments, now Keith owns the building. No, that doesn't help. That doesn't do anything. Doesn't help energy efficiency, wealth distribution, anything. So that's another added incentive for buildings as well, to feel like, okay, this is not going to add another lien to the home, or a lien for those that have a lien in general.
So do you divide that 20, like that house that you showed, did you divide that $1,000 into monthly payments? How do people pay you?
Yes, that's absolutely right. Depending on how long the term is, we're like, okay, what's the term amount, what the cost is, and this is what it would cost for 15 years. Is that your to the building owner, is that what you want to do? If 15 years is what you're looking for, and they say yes, they sign an agreement. If they want less years, we're fine.
Okay. And then but they don't own the equipment at the end of the 15 years, but it's probably needs to be replaced maybe by then, or what? Yeah.
Well, most systems last 25 years. That's a great question. Most systems last 25 years. Yes, you can own the equipment at the end. That's your choice. Some people, to your point, some people say, well, in 15 years, I'll see if I want to replace it. Some people say, I'm going to keep it. It's up to them. I mean, obviously, we're 2 years in, so we're not your 15th many folks, but at least for the 2 building owners that we've spoken to the most about this, and they've been the ones that we're fortunate enough to utilize our marketing materials and have done videos. They're just like, we're not going to take it out if it works, right? Yeah. And for many people, it's also a legacy to the building. Like, I've done this, and I want it to be there.
Yeah. And if it's working, then they're finished. If it's a 15-year lease and they've paid you, then it's done. They don't owe you anymore. Okay, that makes sense.
My comment and question is a little moving away from individual homes. I'm still worried about. We're assuming that in future we are going to have a large-scale renewable electric power. Let us say a situation in which we have 40% solar, 40% wind, and some nuclear and hydropower. That's probably is the goal. Will be a really rosy future, but then we do have to worry about, as I said, backup. Now, the usual backups like batteries, flywheel, maybe pump up water and things like that can take care of problems for a few hours, maybe at the most. Then what happens? We need to plan what happens with the longer terms like days or a large scale, large area power outage. Then what is the alternative? Now, we also know that at that time, perhaps most vehicles and cars will be electrified. So things can come to a standstill if you don't have the power of that thing. Now, what are the alternatives? So the other batteries and things like that can't work for days. So one need to think about it and do research on that. One possible solution is maybe use of hydrogen. Hydrogen can replace like gasoline and natural gas. So it can produce probably the emergency power can also be used in vehicles. So that may give you sort of standby arrangement, but there may be other alternatives. So there's a need to go into this problem, do the research and plan for this thing, especially now that we are talking about large scale investments in infrastructure. This is the time to worry about what happens after 20, 30 years when this situation happens. How do we face these problems? So we need to start right now and many of the other possibilities, and a lot of research needs to be done.
Well, first, I agree, and I feel like you should be on the forefront on this as well, because it's a question that we. I mean, I've done a lot of I've had a lot of these conversations over the last 3-4 years, and your questions, comments, concerns are right up against what we hear from other homeowners, other key stakeholders in the community, and even governments and utilities. I don't think it's one answer. I do agree that we do need a mix of answers to deal with that the day when we have, a more mixed power grid, or if we're on clean energy. And we're still learning about it. What I would say is that I look forward to that day where if we're at a point where clean energy is, to your point, sir, 50, 60, 70% of the grid, 85% of the grid, 95. And then if you and I need to have like a knockdown bit of argument on how to fix it, I would love it, because it means that we both won. It means that we're off fossil fuels, and maybe we've staved off some climate change, and we can focus on the next step on, to your point, building the best backup systems, including hydrogen, which is something that folks talk about. I know there's other things. I know wind has been talked about as some form of backup as well. But you're right. We have the opportunity over the next 2-3 years, as we talk about infrastructure and these projects, to find a plethora of answers, not just one answer. Because obviously what works in California will not work in Portland, will not work in Florida, will not work in New York. So it's happening. I just think, we just need to do it. We just need to go out there and do it. And we have not started yet.
What happens if new regulations requiring big upgrades, and I take this, government regulations requiring big upgrades for the 15-year lease is completed? Is that a possibility, or what would your company do?
I see what you're saying. So they have to so there's a couple of things. One, if the building owner needs to upgrade the systems, we can work with them, whether it's to purchase a new system, remove the system. Yeah. And that's a great question. At least 2 projects we worked on, I've asked, well, what happens if, the system I have now is great. It's a 2020 system. Mm-hmm. Let's say in 2027, there's a brand new, fireworks, shiny, brand new system. And in your point, I have to put this in. Yeah, we'd work with them, and we'd have to work with them. And I would assume, and I hope that if there is some government regulations that fit that, there's also some incentives to help move building owners to this new program. We assume, and we've seen it work well, and continue to work well in New York State, where the market and government are aligned on how to move toward clean energy and toward at least New York's clean energy goals in 2030, which is pretty exciting. But it's a great question. Yep.
Okay. Well, Keith, we're just about wrapping up. Is there anything that you want to end with? There's things, I know we kind of stopped you from doing your whole presentation, which is pretty typical of our group. So go ahead and finish. You've got a few minutes, so go right ahead and finish.
First, let me say thank you for the opportunity to do this today. I really enjoy this. I know that sounds like it's placating or I'm trying to be nice. I mean that. I enjoy having these conversations, because it means that I'm not the only person that thinks about this 7 days a week, right? And not just energy, but community organizing and bettering the earth and everything we're doing. So I always appreciate that. Second, I would say um, it seems everyone's aligned here around at least three items. One, how do we move forward, right? And then once we get there, how we go to the next level. And it seems at minimum you have, the Portland Clean Energy Fund, and you have some plan in place, whether it's the best plan or not. I think that's great. And I would love to work with you, anyone else you feel that Danella, I need to talk to in Portland to help with the process. Finally, I've said a lot of nice things today. I think I have to review the tape later. Maybe I wasn't so good. But if you know any building owners or thank you, any building owners, anyone else, just go through the process. Like, fill out a building intake form. Let us know what you think. Like, we're always interested to hear how building owners across the country think about our building intake form, right? What works, like I said, what works in Florida may not work here, other places. So we're always excited to learn about it and just to learn about like what other needs, and finally, as today's a nice Sunday, and hope everyone gets some time to relax, have a good time. Just try to look around your home and maybe around your friends and family and think about what are we doing to help or hurt the process. You don't have to yell at your family or friends. Maybe you do at a certain point, but to think about, are you part of the problem? Or are you part of the solution? That's how the doors work. Either you're opening a door or you're closing a door. There's no midway. So I think that's it. I mean, I've enjoyed this. Feel free if you want to do this again, or if you think I should be talking to other people, let me know. And I think I shared the PowerPoint with a couple of folks on this call as well. So you can look at the PowerPoint. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. I'm pretty responsive by email. And I hope all of you have a tremendous day. Good week.
Great. Well, thanks. Oops, I gotta get my script.